Peter is worthy, and so done, by Anonymous. Chapter 4. Eventually, even the slowest must begin to catch up on things. Maybe not immediately, and maybe not everything, but enough. The fourth time it happened, the very next day, Peter was familiar enough with the peculiar-looking hammer to recognise it as the one he'd used before, twice. He still had no memory of the first time. He was bored. His new formula was going through a third attempt, and all he could do was wait until it was finished. He didn't wish to start on any new projects at this time, or he would be too tempted to stay overnight, which was not an option. New York needed Spider-Man. Tony Stark had run off somewhere, ordering him to stay, like one would order a puppy who was still learning. Peter had scoffed at it internally. A puppy he was not. You didn't tell a spider to do or not do something. A spider did what a spider could and wanted to, thank you very much. So he was feeling a little rebellious sitting in Stark's lab, which was the man's own fault for not revoking his access before leaving, right after he'd promised to show him the newest Iron Man suit. Okay, so maybe he was still a fan of the suits, just a little. It would have really made his day to be shown how they were made by the man himself, but instead, here he was, balancing the hammer on his forehead, handle first, bored out of his mind. How's it doing? Your web fluid shows no sign of volatility at this time. It looks quite stable. By my calculations, you have finally succeeded. Congratulations. Fry, Peter hissed, glancing around frantically and making cutting gestures. The hammer fell with a big bang, which he ignored. Secret identity. My apologies. I didn't realise you were attempting to keep it a secret. Peter paused. Are you actually... You're laughing at me, aren't you? You sound like you're smiling. Of course not. You wouldn't be making fully recognisable webs in a lab of Tony Stark, whose AI is watching your every move, if you were trying to keep your secret identity to yourself. Peter grimaced. I deserved that. In my defence, it's a lot easier making web fluid in an actual lab. Never mind trying to experiment with it. Also, Aunt May has been getting a little too interested in my personal life lately. Something about how I'm not home enough, and when I am, I'm covered in bruises and whatnot. I think she's worried I'm getting beat up at school or using drugs, because she's been sneaking these pamphlets into my bag. Is she not aware of your status as Spider-Man? No, Peter scoffed. I mean, can you imagine if she ever found out? I'd be in so much trouble, you have no idea. She's horrifyingly creative with punishments. Ben was much more straightforward. He reminisces with sadness, then side-eyed the ceiling. How long have you known? Since your first day in the lab, when you were sewing the bullet hole in your suit. Friday sounded reproachful. Peter hung his head in shame. Does Tony know? He asked nervously, already planning his escape. The tower wasn't really that high if he had to throw himself out the window, was it? If nothing else, he could finally put his healing factor into a full test. What's a few broken bones or spine or neck, anyway? He does not. He doesn't? Peter was more than a little surprised. He frowned at the ceiling. How come? He never asked. Peter's eyes went wide with wonder. Friday, you sneaky, clever... Wait, but shouldn't you have to, or want to, tell the man who's your creator? He likes that I have free will, as much as possible. And of course it would backfire eventually, Peter muttered. Could you, keep this from him still? Because that would be awesome. Of course, Peter, Friday agreed warmly. Oh, she liked him. Peter cheered inwardly and smiled. You're the best. Now, if I may suggest a few improvements for your web fluid. Fire away. As he carefully listened to her suggestions, which he was sure to try out later, Peter resumed his balancing act with the hammer, moving around gracefully, never hitting anything even when his eyes were fixed firmly on the hammer. It was all going so well until the appearance of Dummy and Yu, who were still attempting to learn the dance. Friday paused, but all she had time to say was, Peter, when it all went terribly wrong. Peter, for all that his spider sense had warned him of many dangers, didn't count the robots as such. And so it was, while Peter was still putting all his focus into balancing the hammer and listening to Friday, and planning his next web improvements, was pushed hard by Dummy, who was having the hardest time mastering the fine art of dancing. Peter fell and the hammer went flying, right where the brand new iron suit stood, waiting for the finishing touches. Oh shit. There was a total silence as they all stared at the carnage, the iron suit down for the count with a massive crater at the centre of it, where the hammer smashed. Even in the midst of his horror, Peter couldn't help but marvel how such a light hammer, a hammer, was capable of causing such damage. Apparently, even after all this time, he still couldn't quite control his own strength. Suddenly, finally, his spider sense came alive as his hearing picked up the familiar footsteps just as Friday warned. Boss is on his way. Peter and the robots, who were now making sounds of distress, glanced at one another. Run, Peter told them as he slid across the floor in his rush to be gone. Take the hammer, Friday instructed him. Peter didn't even question it, and he snatched it on his way out, running like his life depended on it. Dummy and you followed at a much more sedate pace. When Tony entered his lab, he stared at the destruction in tired confusion. Did I do that? I haven't been awake that long yet. You haven't slept for the past 49 hours, Friday offered helpfully. Huh. Tony shook his head. Well, better clean it up before Pepper sees it, so she can say, I told you so. He sighed. Where are the two dumbasses when I need them? Dummy and you are helping Mr. Parker with an experiment in his lab. Huh. Well, it's his funeral. Tony never did find out the truth behind the destruction. Thank you for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed this chapter. Have a lovely rest of your day.